Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the SMPTE Hollywood section, I would like to thank you all for coming and welcome you to the Culver Theater. It's really great to see so many industry professionals gathered here tonight. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Juan Reyes, and I am the SMPTE Hollywood section chair, and it is an honor to be here with all of you. So events like this is what SMPTE is all about. We gathering industry professionals to network for education, knowledge, new technologies to really help to promote the industry, to provide the SMPTE members with value to their membership. For those of you that are not SMPTE members, I urge you to consider joining. And so with that, I would like to introduce tonight's event producer, former SMPTE Hollywood section chair, Linda Rosner.
I'm hoping to be as short as Juan. Actually, I'm shorter than Juan. Okay, in timing. Anyway, thank you all for coming tonight. And again, if you're a SMPTE member, thank you. And if you're not a SMPTE member, we hope you will please consider joining. So I want to thank my co-producers in alphabetical order, Brian Gaffney, Bill Hogan, and Laura Tommen. It's really, you can't do it without, it takes a village. Let's just put it that way. I want to give a special thanks again to Amazon MGM's Raymond Young, who's also SMPTE Standards Vice President. And again, Raymond is the one that helps us secure this wonderful venue, along with Tom Beto, the Culver Theater Director of Programming and Events. I also want to thank our projectionist, Chris Carden, who's here tonight. He has been absolutely wonderful. And I just want to say that because this is a movie theater, food and drinks are allowed. However, please be mindful and pick up after yourself so we may leave the theater in good condition. I also want to give a special thanks to Antoinette Perez for Women in Restoration, because she helped us immensely in gathering this panel and the panel we had last month for preservation. Also, please get your parking ticket validated just outside this theater. When exiting this theater, it's just to your right. So SMPTE Hollywood's next meeting focuses on content authenticity security and addressing new challenges, and it will be on Thursday, April 30th, not here. It will be at the Switch in Burbank, so we'll be on the other side of the hill for y'all. And now, please meet tonight's moderator, entertainment technology leader, CTO, advisor, and industry evangelist, Bill Baggelaar.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Great to see everybody here. I feel like it's like I know at least half the people in this audience, and I'm like so glad to see everybody. That's why I like coming to these events. It's oh, sorry. Here, we'll put it up a little bit. Oh, I guess I'm a little taller. There we go. Oh, come on. That's a left-handed thing. There, how's that? Now that wants to move. There we go. Okay, better? Okay, so anyway, I'm Bill Baggelaar, as Linda said, and really glad to be here. This is one of my favorite topics. I love talking about restoration, remastering. I from a personal perspective, I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to work with fantastic professionals that do this work all the time. I've been able to help maybe a little bit in certain areas, getting to work on restorations of not just Warner Brothers titles when I was at Warner Brothers, Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, North by Northwest, but titles for other studios like Ten Commandments and Godfather and Easy Rider, just across the board, a lot of stuff for Disney as well. And so it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Just like my animation background, I loved working in animation. I loved working with all of the great professionals who do this work so diligently, and seeing how much effort and time and care they put into this to bring these movies back to life for people to see and it's really a testament to their continued efforts and in being able to not just preserve our film heritage, but bring these to life so that we can actually see these and consume them and understand the film history that we have. So just a few words there. That's all I wanted to say. And with that, I will start. Oh, and make sure you have questions. Keep your questions. We're going to have a panel discussion at the end, so you'll be able to ask questions at that point. So we'll go on from there. So please welcome our first presenter, Andrea Callis from Iron Mountain.
Oh, hi to all the people I didn't say hi to in the lobby. It's so nice to see you. Thank you, Bill, for the introduction. Thank you, SMPTE, for putting this together. It's so great to see so many people and so many friendly faces in the room. I really appreciate this chance to chat with you. I'm going to push this over a little bit right here, if that's okay. Can you hear me okay? So I work for Iron Mountain now. I'm Andrea Callis. I work for Iron Mountain. I head a group called Media and Archival Services, and we provide all sorts of different things for people who run archives, from environmental storage to digitization to digital archiving. And we work across entertainment studios. We do corporate archiving. We do personal. We do all the archiving you can ever think of. But I've had a fantastic career working in that UCLA Film and TV Archive, where I kind of learned everything I needed to know from some of the amazing experts that were around when I started many years ago. I've worked at DreamWorks with animation and digital archiving then, worked at the British Film Institute with an enormous collection, worked at Paramount Pictures for many years running the archive, and I couldn't be more thrilled to share this panel with my former colleague, Charlotte. And I think that, a number of different kinds of organizations and different kinds of audiences for that organization, whether it's a studio archive that has a audience of the studio itself, right? When you run that archive, you work for the people that are distributing those films and do those films, but a public archive like BFI or UCLA has a different constituency. They have students, or they have the general public they need to do. But I found that there is more similarities than there are differences across those organizations when it came to archive and preservation. And I think it can really be talked about in terms of the weight and the dedication that people in those roles feel when they understand that what they're preserving is so incredibly important. We do feel that in a way that informs our work in so many ways. And as I work at Iron Mountain too, I'm always interested to see how that necessary dedication that archivists have are influenced by changing times, right? Because in order to archive, in order to preserve and restore, you need to work within all sorts of different systems, and winds change and things change. So right now we're at a really interesting moment, right? We wonder whether AI is going to make movies. We are seeing technology change things. We're seeing studio mergers. You may have heard about that. We're seeing all these different changes going on, and so I'm sort of constantly fascinated about how does that shift how we do our work? How does that put an emphasis on it? How does that help us do our work through just basic, will people pay for what we do, to how can we get it out there? All those kinds of things. And I sort of sometimes reflect on, in a sort of another moment in time in the history of film preservation, which was sort of the late 80s, early 90s, when there was a lot of agita around colorization. I think a few people might remember that in this room. as you may recall, there was a huge outcry. Many famous directors and cinematographers went public about how horrible it was, and how this was going to just wreck everything that was about cinema history, and everything was going to be awful. And they had a point, because at the very least, the technology kind of sucked, right? I mean, the movies looked horrible. But out of that, there were some really amazing archivists, some of them in this room, that understood that this was a moment of opportunity born of crisis. Out of that there was congressional legislation about colorization. God, kind of incredible to imagine that now, right? And out of that legislation came things like the National Film Preservation Board, the National Film Preservation Foundation, the Image Permanence Institute in Rochester, New York got more funding. Martin Scorsese's Film Foundation was founded around that time. It was really an incredible moment for film preservation. It was also when Iron Mountain started storing film. They saw the market opportunity of studios starting to care about their catalogs a little bit more. And that was when our organization was really formed, and we've developed over the years. That's not the main point of the story. Iron Mountain is just a footnote. But the point is, the opportunity from crisis. Is it a crisis now? I'm not sure, really. AI is used in searching over archives really effectively. There's a sort of good story there amongst the fear about AI. But I think what I have a feeling many people in this room feel is that, we tell our stories through moving images now more than we ever have. It may not be in the aspect ratio we like. It's a little vertical. But, it's everywhere, right? And the 21st century is being told with moving images. And the history of that is almost exclusively there. We don't tell it as much in text. We don't tell it as much in images. We tell it in moving images. And what we're preserving and restoring, largely from the 20th century, is how that happened, right? How that technology emerged, how those stories got told. And so it's how we talk to each other almost. It's how we communicate with each other. And so the weight even becomes greater, in my opinion, for preservation and restoration. I don't do restoration now. I have done, and in many instances in my previous career. And thank you, Charlotte, for letting me talk a little bit about a Paramount movie. But Wings, I just like to highlight it because it was really, it illustrates in many ways, I think, why we do what we do. Wings was a film that, for audiences who saw it in 1927 when it was released, it was the time that they actually saw how aviation interacted with war for the first time. And it's an incredible story of production when there were actual planes that were staged in Texas that had been used to fight in World War I that were doing nothing. And William Wellman, the director, actually convinced the U.S. government to use them in a movie. And he had his actors flying planes and shooting film. I don't think that ever happened again. And our restoration of that was from an element that was extremely compromised, sadly. The only thing that was really around was and I'm going to talk tech because I think I got the right crowd for it, but it was it was a dupe neg that was made from a deteriorated nitrate print. And there was nitrate deterioration printed in on both sides of the film. It was really not a great element to start to work with. But the transformative nature of technology made it a huge difference in that restoration. We also had discovered the original score, and we re-recorded that score, and without too much arm twisting, convinced the amazing Ben Burt, the sound effects designer, who's, Academy Award winning, made little things like, Star Wars and WALL-E. He had an incredible, amount of sound effects that he had in his own library, including some of the original sounds from the planes that were in Wings, and mixed this incredible track. And it fit within the roadshow distribution of the film. For example, it played at the Criterion Theater in New York in a roadshow format for a year. And by roadshow, I mean there was a live orchestra, they did sound effects, they did the whole thing. So we were trying to recreate that experience of, and I always had in my mind the people that had read in the newspaper about World War I, who had lost family members in World War I, who had shown the difference that aviation made to warfare and how this was going to be different, and the technology that was influencing their life, going into the Criterion Theater or another big theater in a big city and seeing this extravaganza that still makes me cry to this day, that movie, in the end. But, it was just such an incredible experience. Not only was it the most challenging, and I forgot the Handschlegel color. Handschlegel color, with it, you could see a little bit of it. They'd actually had printed in, it's a patented version of actually stamping color on the flames and the other things that were shooting out of that plane. So it had it all, right? It had early special effects. It had an incredible sound. It had the restoration of what we needed to do to bring the picture back. And so I like to talk about it as sort of a wonderful summary of why we do what we do. It's the history, it's the technology, it's the expertise to do it. And I think, I'm just incredibly proud to be on a panel today, although I don't do restoration myself anymore, to be included in the panel of people that continue this incredible work. Cassandra at Universal is doing amazing things. Charlotte it's wonderful to see how much she's doing. Grover has been an inspiration and a mentor for many years, and Larry has always been innovative in the technology that we do. So I'm really proud to be included in this panel with these incredible people, because I think really, it is, it's what we do when we restore films. We use a lot of technology, but we never forget the original. The original is always so critically important, and that concept. So the technology we use is not to change, but to restore, to bring back. And right now, with, I've been noticing, and probably you have too, that the interest in whether it's going to see a film in 35 millimeter or making sure you're buying physical media. I heard from a friend of mine who works for Sony Music that last year was the best year in vinyl ever. So that sort of return to something real, tangible, that has not been produced by AI or interrupted by AI is, I think there's something going on there. There is a need for that, an importance to that. And I think that's what fuels restoration too, is that even though you're using technology to clean things up or to restore a frame of film, it is that intent on respecting that original thing that archivists and restorationists have always have. And maybe just the rest of the world is catching up to what we've been doing all along. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Iron Mountain briefly, and I'm just going to play a short video about some work we did with the British Film Institute.
In London, Iron Mountain's Living Legacy initiative is supporting the restoration of silent film not screened for 100 years. With our backing, the team at the British Film Institute has worked tirelessly to bring some of the first Sherlock Holmes stories shown on the silver screen to life for a new generation.
It's the last surviving silent film work that people haven't seen.
I believe that the films we hold are so important to our history. It's bringing these films to a whole new generation of audiences.
The benefit of restoring anything is really so that you can see behind the myriad of faults, scratches, tears, dirt, which, when it's very bad, kind of lose the story.
Visual culture generally is a sort of common language that we all have, isn't it? It's accessible, the power of the visual image to get across a story and make a connection with people.
That's what I love, that's what I'm passionate about.
The people at BFI know that society needs stories. With support from Iron Mountain, this story lives on.
You know, Iron Mountain helps support this work, and we do not only film, but we work with, we're just starting an engagement, for example, with the Paris Opera, where there are a number of posters that go back for about 150 years from both the ballet and the opera history that we're scanning for them. So it's important for us and really fortunate for us that there's a dedication not only to how we store things for you and make sure we make money at it, but also there's that cultural element to it that's really critical to the organization. And just one last thing I wanted to talk about, which is something I've been talking about for a long time. When I was at the British Film Institute, I built a below zero vault, and at Paramount we bought a below zero vault. Hopefully we will be around to, as technology advances, continue to restore our films, and keeping those original negatives is part of that story. And acetate film has, is in, somewhat of a crisis right now, where as acetate film deteriorates, it actually accelerates. Once it hits a point of deterioration, actually accelerates deterioration. And below zero storage is the way to actually stop it. Stop deterioration, stop color fade. And so that's one thing I've been sort of pushing on at Iron Mountain, is to provide better storage for those film negatives that are really critical to be around, whether they're just there as artifacts or whether we can go back to them and restore them more in the future as technology advances. So that's my little pitch. But thank you for including me in this, and thanks for everyone.
Thank you, Andrea. I think that your talk leads right into where we're going next with Larry and technology. And I think that, well, actually, you want to bring, we're ready for you. You're going to do your thing.
Yeah.
We'll let you bring up what you're going to do. But anyway, Larry's up.
Okay. Let's start with this. Okay. So I'd like to talk about the future, but in order to talk about the future, we should talk about at least the present and a little bit about the past. And I'd like to talk first about MTI and why we're in the restoration business at all. It started about 35 years ago. Two professors of applied math at Brown University were working on a project of computer chips. How do you look at a computer chip coming off the line and make sure that it's good, because it has to be perfect? Well, they came up with an algorithm that looked at a high quality image, a high resolution image of a computer chip. That became the control. And then they looked at the production line. They compared the two, and if there was some fault in the chip that came off the production line compared to the control, they rejected it. That was the basic premise of high resolution images, being able to compare each other. Well, there was a fellow by the name of Jay Cassidy, who was a film editor, who went to school with one of the professors and said, that's an interesting idea. I bet you could use that for film restoration by looking at the frame before and the frame after. And if something's not there in the frame before and after, it might be dirt or a scratch or something like that. So they took one of their PhD students, fellow by the name of Kevin Manbeck, and he developed an algorithm for Paramount, in fact, on the first film for Paramount. Don't remember the name of the film, you'll forgive me. But that algorithm was the beginning of digital film restoration about 35 years ago. And what they did was they looked at frames before, frames after, saw a piece of dirt, you would swipe it, and magically it disappeared. So that was the beginning of film restoration at MTI. And so let's just review some of the traditional tools that we all are familiar with. You have a piece of dirt over here, and you got to get rid of it. So that's a manual thing. You would draw a box around it, and sure enough, it would disappear. So you would you would use pixels from the previous frame and the succeeding frame, and possibly some pixels from the current frame, and you would make the repair. And that was a big deal to get rid of a piece of dirt 35 years ago. The next thing we developed was a scratch tool. Now, I hope you can see the scratch. Can you? By the way, it's a blue scratch. And so this blue scratch means it's on the blue channel only. So we provided the ability to look at the blue channel only as a place to detect the scratch, and then the question is, how do you fix it? And the way you do it is you borrow pixels from the adjoining scratch. So whatever pixels are on the side of the scratch, you're grabbing them and you're feathering them together to create this spatial fix, and that's what that looks like after you fix it. So that was the scratch tool. Great, we can fix scratches. Oh well, now we have a little more dramatic problem to fix, and that's where the paint tool came in. The paint tool gave you the ability to paint within the same frame, move things around, and create something that actually fixes it, and there you go. That's how that worked. There are different ways of doing that now, and I'll show you one of the ways in a little while. The next tool, well, debris. Hard to see maybe, but there are lots of scratches, lots of pieces of dirt, and we came up with an algorithm for what we call the auto filter. And I should tell you that this is the business that MTI started with. MTI was not in the restoration business. We were in the restoration software business, creating the technology for others to do the work. Well, I'd like to tell you just a little bit of how I got involved. I was involved I started off as a film editor. Let's start with that, and always had an interest in film. Became a part owner of Encore Video. Maybe some of you have heard of that. Riot, Film Corps, a couple of companies here in Hollywood and ultimately in other places. But film was always the basis of what we did. And after I left the company that purchased us, which was a place called Ascent Media, you might remember that one as well. Raise your hand if you remember Ascent Media. I'm sorry. Okay, so anyway, I left there, and I was fascinated by this company, MTI Film. I really liked them. They were great people, and they didn't have the hysteria that we normally have in our profession. You know, they're academics. They sit around and actually talk about things, and nobody raises their voice, which was very rare for me. I mean, you're not yelling. Why aren't you yelling at each other? What's wrong with you people? But they approach things as an academic would, very scientifically, and it was appealing to me, being the hysteric that I am. It was really nice to see calm people talking to each other. So that was an education in and of itself. Years of therapy wouldn't have done it, but they did. So then, so the next thing that happened was I met, as many people here in this theater probably know, probably one of the gold standard of film restoration mentors, a fellow by the name of Grover Crisp. He's embarrassed. Sorry, Grover. It's okay. But the truth of the matter is Grover's been a mentor to many people, myself included. I called him up and I said, hey, I'm Larry Chernoff. I was the CEO of blah, 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 blah. He said, yeah, I've heard of you. I said, okay, well, I would like to get into your business. And he actually opened his doors to us. He knew of MTI because we did technology, but he had no idea whether we could do the restoration, which we couldn't, by the way. at the time. But we learned a lot, and I give a lot of credit to him and to the people at Sony for allowing us to work with them, as well as Paramount. So that's where some of these tools will evolve. They evolved by being actually involved with the film restoration business. So you have things like RGB alignment. So, you know, you have Technicolor, so you need to align things. Here's a typical example of 3 layers. The RGB layers are completely misaligned. Now you do one thing and boom, here they are aligned. Wonderful. That was a cool thing. And basically what we're doing there is we're using the green channel as the control, and we're moving the red and the blue channels to match the green channel. And if we have to, you have the ability to warp the image as well. So you have the green channel be the control, you warp the red and the blue channels to it. A pretty cool process. Then you have original nitrate, looks gorgeous, but it is missing frames. So you end up with a dupe of some kind, and it's of course geometrically in the wrong place. We developed our stabilization and dewarp tools, and that's the end of that. So now it looks like that, and it matches, and you can get the colorist to do whatever he needs to do to make the color match. The next thing we did, and everybody should be familiar with this if you're an old film guy or woman, you have lab mistimes, or what else are they called other than mistimes? Printer lag is another term that is used. And what you get is this gradient at the top or the bottom of the frame, depending on whether it's the incoming or the outgoing. And the reason for that is that the printer lights just simply wouldn't change fast enough, so you get the lag. And so what we did was we came up with a method of just swiping it and then looking at the next frame and making it match subsequent frames. And that's basically to help the colorist. The first time I showed it to a colorist at NAB, she went, not so good, not so good. So we went back to the drawing board, and because she felt she could do it better, you know. That was Sherry Eisenberg, by the way. Is she in the audience? Yes, she is. Where are you, Sherry? Raise your hand. There you go. You see, look at this. Look at this, Sherry. Look at that. Huh? Okay?
So you have to thank her.
Well, actually, there's a lot of people to thank, and a lot of them were colorists who would say things like, you could do that better, and here's an idea for how to do it better. I can tell you that happened often. Anyway, that became, and so we could go on with, okay, we have deflickering tools, stabilization tools, different types of deflicker, zonal, global. I'm using global right now on a film that is flickering terribly, but it's going to be just fine. So lots of things happened in traditional tools. Now it's the time of AI. And now we started, I wouldn't say fooling around, I'd say we got serious with AI in the last 3 years, probably maybe even 4 years now. And how did it happen? We started doing Walker, Texas Ranger, a remastering of the series. There were 100 and some odd episodes. I don't remember the exact number, but it's like 180 episodes. And 111. Was that Rita? Okay. Well, it does say Paramount and Sony, so yes, you're allowed to speak. You're more than welcome. And so we started doing the remastering, working in conjunction with the people at Paramount in their facilities. And unfortunately, they wanted it for streaming, and it needed to be a 23.976, which is fine. Everything was shot in film. Great. As long as it has 3.2, we can remove the 3.2. We can transfer the dailies, get that all set up, do an automatic correlation of the dailies to the reference, and then have an edit master. Great, we could do that. But however, several episodes were shot at 30 frames per second, and almost every episode had a 30-frame shot in it for a visual effect or something. And in the old days, it didn't matter. You had 60 fields, you added 3.2, everybody was happy. So this is a little different, though. We had to deliver in 29.976. So what we did was we went to all the traditional tools, and they all failed. Why? Because Chuck was doing this, he was doing this, and And everything was a kick, and if you had lateral motion, which there was a lot of, you'd get that stair-stepping kind of effect. So it just failed. Well, one of my flame artists came over to me and said, look, I know this is probably not going to work because it takes seconds per frame, but Flame just has a plugin that will do some sort of a frame generation. I think we can call it generative AI now. And I looked at it and I said, oh my God, that's fantastic. How much time does it take? Well, we're working at 4K. It takes about 2 seconds, 3 seconds a frame. Oh, well, we have about 130,000 frames, okay? So I don't think that's going to work. And it would take, we calculated, it would take us about 40 hours to do a single episode. Impossible, because in addition to the actual work of doing the generative AI, we'll call it, we also had to fix all the artifacts that occur. The artifacts would be motion artifacts, warping at the edges of objects, things of that nature. And it was very primitive at that time. So I didn't discount it. I just simply said, and Rita will remember this, I said, it's going to take us months, but we will come up with something that will be viable. And we showed them the test, which we did at seconds per frame, and they were just blown away. They couldn't believe it. It looked good. So what we did, let's go ahead and show you what we did. So I gathered the development team, and I said, here's what we got to do. Time is sacrosanct. We have to make sure the time is the same. If you're running at 30 frames, we're going to run it at 24 frames. Forgive me for using 24. It's easy. At 23,976 is just a mouthful. So we will have the track is sacrosanct. We have to keep in sync, and cuts have to be in the exact same place or within a frame, depending on where the cut where the time comes out. So that means that one of the developers had to come up with a timing algorithm that essentially would measure every shot, know exactly where it is on what we call clock time. We're not going by time code anymore, we're going by real time. And in terms of clock time, we want to know where that cut is, how long the shot is, because if it's 30 frames, it has to be 24 frames. If it's 60 frames, it has to be 48 frames, that type of thing. So that's the first part of the algorithm, is to make sure that time equals time, whether it's 30 or 24. We then had to implement it into the GPU to speed things up. We had to add some new tech. For example, we developed a distributed rendering, so we could go to 20 machines if we had to. And so 2 seconds became 10 frames per second. I mean, it actually started working. We could actually do a show. And then we developed a very important tool, which is the concurrency of 30, or let's call it the original frame rate versus the target frame rate. So you had both running concurrently inside our DRS tool, and we could borrow pixels from the source into the target if there was some sort of anomaly or artifact. And that I'm going to actually demonstrate to you in a moment. And then later, because of the folks over at Universal, they had a film that was 24 frames, but they wanted it to be 25. And the little extra that they threw in there was that they had already done their Dolby Vision, and they needed to have Dolby Vision be spot on cut per cut. If you're familiar with Dolby Vision, it's metadata, and that's all it is. And so between the folks at Dolby and our development team, we came up with an automatic way to convert the 24 frame to a 25 frame, and it was frame accurate, and everybody danced a hora. You're welcome. You're very welcome. Well, I didn't know if you wanted me to say anything. I'm under NDA, so I can't say anything, and she's very strict. Okay, so give me a moment. I'm going to just change over to an application now, and this application is available to anybody, by the way. Seriously, we don't keep any of our tools as does that look right? Yes, it does. Okay, so let me entertain you. Let me show you the very first thing that motivated this, and that was Walker, Texas Ranger. And what I'm going to do, can you hear me okay if I, yeah? Okay, let me do this, let's do this. And zoom it out. Now on the left side, if you notice, it says 2997, and on the right side it says 2398. So what we did was we knew we had to run in sync, and so we just had to decide. The algorithm just says, what's the frame rate of the source, what's the frame rate of the target, and what do we need to do in order to get them to sync up? Well, in the case of 30, you have to eliminate 1 frame every 5 frames. Okay, pretty straightforward. So on the left side, it might look a little bit stuttered because we are doing that, but on the right side is our actual frame generation to time. Now, occasionally we have to move a frame in either direction on the cut in order to accommodate any rounding error, so to speak. So this was the very first thing we did on frame generation using AI, and being able to do it in a timely fashion. And I'm going to stop it in a moment and show you how we would fix something as an example. Yeah, there's a lot of kicking in these shows. And he's kicked the butt. Ooh, that's a terrible thing to say. Ooh, I'm sorry. I am really sorry. But I couldn't resist it. And Chuck, I think, would have laughed. So let's look at this frame. You can see that here's the original on the left. Here's the the generated frame. There's a problem. And would you notice it if it was in real time? The answer is no. But what we can do is I can paint from the left side to the right side. I can do that. I'm going to reject it. Or I can just press a button. And that's it. So you can actually replace frames. You can replace part of frames, things of that nature. Okay, so that is what I wanted to show you in terms of generative AI. But I want to also show you live, right here, right now, in front of everybody, in real time. Let's see. Okay, let's go backwards. Don't look. Close your eyes. Okay, so here's generative AI, and we have a jump cut. This jump cut happens right there. I think you can see that. Can you not? I'm going to go to my tool, and I'm going to say repair a jump cut, and I'm simply going to just mark that frame, what I call the A side of the jump cut. And then I'm going to mark the shot. I'm going to tell it to make a 2-frame insertion. It's going to analyze it right here, right now, right in front of you. And here's the jump cut first. And here's the fix. So here's, okay, so that's that. Now, let's show you even more exciting stuff. What's that? Got to move, oh, we got to move this forward. You're finding this boring? I'll stop right now. I didn't have to come here tonight, Bill. I had things to do. All right, well, here you go. All right, I'm really going fast now. So here's the next one. Okay, here's missing frames. Okay. So here we're going to see 3 frames that are missing. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to switch here to repair a slug. I'm going to mark this 1, 2, 3. I'm going to tell it to repair it. And I'm just going to mark the shot, and I'm going to analyze it. I'm going to run it again for you so you can see the slug. The cars are moving in the background, the flags are moving, people are moving, and here's the result. So we're basically generating 3 frames. How do we do it? Can I take the time to say a little bit? Thank you, Bill. We're taking the two end frames and we're synthesizing every frame in between. And we're cutting each frame into multiple pieces and basically being able to do a motion estimation on every piece. That's the essence of it. And with that, I thank you for paying attention. You can open the doors now.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Thank you. That's why, I mean, the tools are amazing, and this is really why it's been so impactful in what we're able to do today, just in general. Obviously, Larry has a lot of very specific tools, and there's a lot of other tools out there, and there's so many great digital tools in general, whether it be color correction systems or other tools that are available to really bring these movies back to life. So it's fantastic. Now, I'd like to welcome up Charlotte Barker.
All right, well, I knew that Cassandra and Grover were both going to get up here and absolutely kill it with restoration stories, so I decided not to even try to compete with that, so I'm going in a completely different direction. So I talked to a lot of people about how to get into film restoration. Students, early career folks, people just trying to find any way in. And I realized that no one really talks about the skills that are used day to day for film restoration. So if you're someone here who doesn't quite work in restoration yet and you would like to, is there anybody in here like that? Awesome. This is for you. All right. So I'm Charlotte. I'm not Cassandra. This is a confusion that happens a lot. She knows. No. So I restore old movies for a living, which sounds very glamorous. People imagine spinning film reels, white gloves, the hypnotic flicker of a projector. But the reality is that it's more the smell of vinegar, pallets of unknown material, and fluorescent lights that won't stop flickering. But here's the secret. What I actually do a lot is snoop around and send follow-up emails. Because if you strip it all back, that's really what the job is. It comes down to these two things: relentless curiosity and the refusal to go away, which is a polite way of saying being nosy and being annoying. And these, I feel, are two of the most underrated skills for anyone who wants to restore films. So let me explain. All right, so let's start with being nosy. So in restoration, being nosy doesn't mean you're spying on people in other departments, although sometimes that may help. What it means is that you don't click backwards. Okay, you click forwards. It means you never accept a first answer when your archival senses are telling you otherwise. You must dig for more clues when others are willing to give up. So when someone tells you, that's all that exists, or it's probably gone, or hey, we looked once in the 80s for this, instead of saying, okay, and just moving on, what you should do is you should ask, well, have we received more elements since the last time someone researched this title? Or maybe, are you sure? What's in that box next to the missing box? Or, in what vault were the elements stored before we received them, and who handled them last? After a question or two, you might find yourself tracing corporate histories from 1972, or looking at vault ledgers, or you might even be calling someone who left the company 15 years ago. Asking questions and being nosy is how films come back from the dead. So let me give an example. There have been projects where the best element was flagged as being no good in our archival system. This is what happened with the title Harold and Maude, which we restored a few years ago by Michelle Friedman. She's here in the audience. Go, Michelle. And R.I.P. Bud Court. So our notes indicated that the negative was too severely faded and damaged to be scanned. The note also recommended that we should use the 35mm interpositive instead of the negative. So it'd be easy to read this and assume that this very detailed information is valid, but here's what you have to keep in mind. When was the note written? Because technology changes. So once what was once unscannable may be no big deal to scan now. So keeping all of this in mind, we sent the negative over for inspection and waited for the verdict. When the report came back, it said, this original camera negative is in average condition. So we scanned the negative and we found that the color wasn't that bad either. That is, not with today's technology. So the difference in this case between using the original negative versus a non-original element was deciding to be a little nosy and question a very detailed note. Now, nosy is not about suspicion or lack of faith in what others did before you. It's just about asking smart questions. So here's another example of how being nosy made a restoration better. This one comes from our work on the 1918 Mary Pickford film, Melissa. Is Jeff McCarty here? Is he here? If he's not, I do have to drive you home. Darn. Okay. So we restored this in collaboration with the Mary Pickford Foundation. And for this project, we were working with elements held at the Library of Congress. They had scanned a 35 millimeter and a 16 millimeter element. So the 35 would be our hero, and the 16 could be used to cover any missing material. So the Library of Congress sent those scans to UCLA on a hard drive, which we then borrowed. However, we ran into a problem almost immediately. We were missing a reel 3 from the 35 millimeter, so our hero element was missing something. And then we did have a full set of the 16 millimeter, so we thought, okay, well, we'll just have to use that to fill in where the 35 millimeter is missing. So we reached out to the Library of Congress just to confirm, did you scan everything you had and put it on the hard drive? And they said yes, which meant we were missing a reel. So this would give us one soft reel in the middle of a film because we're jumping from 35 to 16 millimeter. It's not ideal, but it's better than not having any reel at all. But this wasn't our only problem. During a scene towards the end of the film, both the 35 millimeter and 16 millimeter contained the same decomposition, which had left the image severely damaged. It's kind of beautiful in a way. So we started looking for alternatives, and this is where things got a little weird because someone had uploaded a copy of Melissa to YouTube. So when we watched it, we noticed that it didn't contain any of the decomp that we were seeing in our elements. So we started an archival manhunt to find the mystery source behind this YouTube copy. A little research led us to the film detective who had released this title on DVD, and this is where we guessed the YouTube version was sourced from. We contacted them to see if we could use their source element or if they knew what their source element was, but they couldn't remember, so it was a dead end. So we expanded the search, we checked other archives, but we still couldn't find anything. But the source had to come from somewhere. So we went back to the Library of Congress and asked if they could double check their inventory and confirm exactly what they had. And they did a very thorough review, and it turned out they had more elements than we were seeing on our hard drive. In fact, they had a 16 millimeter print that did not have the decomp. They also had the reel 3 for the 35 millimeter element. So there was no missing reel. So what happened? The LOC said they had scanned all the material that they had, and yet here was material that we didn't have scans for. So we contacted UCLA and asked them to confirm how many drives they had received with the scans. And it turned out there were 2 hard drives, but only one had made it to our vendor. Roundabout in the house, I know you are, Vincent. So, the other hard drive had just been sitting quietly, hiding in plain sight on a shelf the whole time, which for any one of you that works in an archive knows is a very normal way for very important materials to behave. So with the second drive and the additional elements, we were able to replace all the decomp sections, and we were able to use the 35 millimeter for the entirety of reel 3 instead of going down to a 16 millimeter source. So the lesson here is not that anyone did anything wrong, it's that film collections are complicated, archives are enormous, and sometimes projects involve many institutions. And that's why being a little nosy, thinking outside the box, checking YouTube, that's why that matters. The difference between a compromise restoration and a great one in this case was persistence and to keep asking more questions. Thanks, Jeff. All right. That's a good segue to let's talk about being annoying. All right. Now, This is a skill no one puts in the job description, but I think it's one of the most important. Keep in mind, being annoying does not mean being aggressive. It's about persistence. Good annoying sounds like, hi, just checking in, or hey, I hope you've been well, following up on that request, or, wait for it, hey there, circling back on this. Because no film has ever been restored because someone thought, well, I don't want to bother so-and-so. So this is a real timeline from one of our restorations that Charles Stepsick oversaw in the audience. Again, everybody's here. All right. I'm going to leave out the title, and I'm going to leave out the archive's name because I still want to borrow material from them. And they're great to work with, but this is an extremely rare case, but it's a good example of what I mean by being annoying in the most professional way possible. All right. So, March 4th, 2022. I reached out to this partner archive about some additional footage that it was rumored that they had. They confirmed they had it, but they said we needed permission from the donor to access it, which they would get for me. This wasn't a problem because we work with this donor all the time, and I assumed this would be a quick approval and we'd be good to go. 2 weeks later, nothing. So I send a friendly follow-up on the 16th, just checking in. I asked if it would help if I contacted the donor myself. Weeks later, no reply. All right, March 29th, I follow up again, this time with a bolder move. I copy in the donor on my email so we could get the approval sorted in the same thread. And then the donor replied, no problems here. Did that get a response? No, crickets. All right, so now we're in April. On April 8th, I check in again and I ask, how can we coordinate borrowing this material from you? Silence. April 19th, I decide to try a new strategy. So I send a very friendly message updating them on how our restoration is going. It's exciting, and I share my excitement for what their material might contain that we don't have and how much we want to borrow it. And I end with, if you need time to pull the assets, just let me know so I don't keep filling your inbox up with inquiries. And when this gets no reply, of course, I continue to fill their inbox with my inquiries. Now, at this point now, we're in May. We'd been given the okay to access the material for 2 months, but since then, I had not received a single reply from this archive. Now, these are great people. I know they're busy, but I also need to move along with my project. So on my May 4th email, I politely ask if there's someone else I should contact for an update. But this time, I decide to copy in everyone that I've ever spoken to at this archive on my email. And this move finally gets a reply. And they apologize, and they say, oh, we thought you knew we were prepping the material for you. Which I don't know how I'd know when nobody's replied. But there was also something very exciting in their response. They said while pulling the material for us, they found that they had found some additional uncatalogued footage. So suddenly I go from annoyed to excited all over again. So a week later, May 12th, the material I've been pestering them about is finally ready to ship. And in their correspondence, they ask, would you like to borrow this new uncatalogued footage? Yes, of course I would. Can this be included in the shipment you're preparing? No, it can't. Because they need to catalog it, which will take some time. And no, they cannot provide me with an ETA. And like deja vu, the whole following up process starts all over again for 3 more months. But I was persistent. And although they took longer than I would have liked, we finally got the footage from them. Because I kept asking, and because they didn't block my emails, they kept digging. So we ended up with more footage than we even originally knew existed. So film restoration is not glamorous all the time, although sometimes it is pretty glamorous. But most of the time it's spreadsheets or it's email threads that are 47 messages long. But also sometimes it's opening a can and realizing that the negative or the piece of film that everyone thought was gone isn't. In that moment, that's what we live for in this job. So my advice for anyone who wants to work in restoration is that you don't forget to be curious, to be persistent, to be collaborative. That's very important. And don't be afraid to be a little nosy and just annoying enough to get the job done. So, thank you.
Hi, everybody. Cassandra Moore, NBC Universal. I'm also tall, so yeah, thank you. And I have on heels. Perfect. Thank you. That's great. Thank you to SMPTE and the folks that invited us. What an honor to be here. I am in awe of this panel, and I'm on it, and I'm like, why am I on this panel? This is an amazing panel, but I'm really honored to be here. And I want to talk a little bit about a different topic. Imagine that. And they didn't even, Bill didn't even tell us what to talk about. Talk about whatever you want, but we each kind of chose a different arena, which I think is kind of fun and shows the different perspective that everybody brings. And restoration is all about perspective, isn't it? And all the different perspectives that we, that we need to get from the community, from our team members, from each other. But I'm going to talk a little bit about how restoration supports the business and how the business helps support restoration, because they go hand in hand. So I'm going to give a little bit of a history about NBC Universal. We have this network called NBC that's 100 years old this year. Pretty exciting stuff. And Universal Pictures was formed 114 years ago. We had our centennial in 2012, which was a really exciting time, and the time when our restoration program was born. So a little bit about what the business has done for the legacy of the film assets. In the 1950s, we started our storing our materials in climate-controlled vaults, and then started geographical separation and protection of our core elements in the 70s. For the past 35 years, give or take, we have preserved photochemically over 2,600 titles, which I think is a really great statistic to list out. And we began our digital preservation program in 2017. So pretty exciting stuff that speaks to, I think, the importance that Universal and NBC put on the amazing library that we have. There was a recent bidding war in Hollywood. Some of you may have read about it in the trades. But what that said to me, seeing all of these companies bidding for this other company, was that, man, catalog is sexy, isn't it? And it really is, and what we do is so important, and what happened in that bidding war just shows the value of what we all do and what are in our vaults and our digital vaults and our physical vaults and all of that wonderful stuff. We are very excited this year to be starting our episodic preservation program. We've been working to get it going for a few years, and we happen to work at a company that really looks at us as a way to provide value back to the company, and the work that we do for the company provides monetization. I know that's maybe a dirty word, but provides monetization back to the company. So, when we're thinking about what we're doing and how we're doing it, we're always keeping that in mind. I think it's also very important to talk about collaboration. And there's been a lot of things that the previous panelists have talked about collaboration. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a film that we collaborated with the Film Foundation on, which is, such a prized relationship that we have. We love our collaboration with the Film Foundation. We've worked on over 12 titles with them, and they've premiered at various festivals around the world. And our goal in what we do with restoration and preservation is for people to see the movies. And while premiering these movies in theaters is very important, I want to call out that it's also important for people to see them in other mediums. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. The part about the episodic preservation that I'm hoping maybe some engineers in here will be excited about is that we are also going to be digitizing our entire physical tape library. So that includes everything from like 2 inches, 1 inches, M2s, you know, if you've heard of those, Betacam SPs. So I think we have to remember those formats and not forget about them because, you know, I'm sure some of you know that some of these shows were shot on tape and finished on tape, and it can become very challenging, and it's important for us all to remember this before we lose the ability to play back these films. So we're pretty excited about that. Thank you, I heard a little clapping, that's exciting. Yay, yay. Yay for digitization of tape. So I talked a little bit, 2012 was when we started our restoration program. We've restored over 170 films from the Universal Library, which also includes the Paramount Library, which is why Charlotte and I always get confused. People confuse us all the time. It's not just a necessity to restore these films, to preserve these films, but it's also an obligation that we feel very deeply at Universal. We're stewards of the library. We see ourselves as stewards of the library. You all are stewards of the libraries that you oversee, for those of you who, I know who you are. We've also committed to restoring 25 of our silent films. We've done that already. We try to do 1 silent film a year. They're a little more complicated to do. But one of the things that we do when we restore a silent is we get a score composed that can be played with it. So that creates a new film, really, but it's the same film. I mean, just turn the sound off if you don't want to listen to the audio track. But it's a very exciting part of the restoration work that we do. And in our episodic work that we're going to be doing, we're also going to be restoring 1 episodic series per year, like with a high quality 4K Dolby Vision restoration, and hopefully that's going to be played on some amazing, you know, streaming platform somewhere. Okay, so I'm going to talk specifically about something that may seem radical to people. I don't know. Hollywood innovates technology. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I heard Andrea say innovate, and I think I might have heard Larry say innovate, and I might even have heard Charlotte say, Charlotte did, she's like, nah, I didn't say it. I was trying to, you know, we got a theme going here. Maybe it was on the slide, something like that. Hollywood has innovated technology since the beginning of Hollywood. Just think about that for a minute. We work in an industry that innovates technology all the time. And I think that we should continue to innovate technology. And I think that we should be, that's right, we should be the ones driving how things are changing here. So we did a film in, oh my God, I'm going to totally blank on the year, 2015. It came out in 2016. And it's a very important film to Universal. And it's a film called The King of Jazz. And I want to talk a little bit about what those engineers in 1929 were doing, because this is SMPTE, right? They were developing a 2-color film process that was super unusual and brought life to the film. I'm going to show you a few clips. I'm not going to do a lot, but I am going to show you a few clips. So they developed this 2-color Technicolor process, which Universal filmed to make this iconic film. But alas, Charlotte talked a little bit about this, the film was considered lost for a while. And this is another part of what we do. Not only do we innovate technology, but we do searches, and we send 1 million emails. I loved what you said, Charlotte. That was great. So in 2015, we decided that we were going to restore the film. It was a collaboration with the Film Foundation. And we worked with a lot of archives. We worked with historians and labs to scan, again, collaboration. We needed to understand the color process. We had never, when we undertook this restoration, we had never worked with film like this before. We didn't know what it was supposed to look like. So we had to bring in people who historically knew what it was supposed to look like. And when we were working on the film, I want to do a special call out. I don't think that they're here, but David Pierce and James Layton wrote an amazing book about not only the film, but they talked a lot about the restoration as well. And it's an incredible book. If you haven't seen it, I have a couple copies if you want to borrow one. But they really helped advise us on, how to proceed with this. It was very, very unique restoration that we did. And, the film has a very distinct look. And if you haven't seen it, I have some good news for you. So in 2016, the film was completed, and it premiered at MoMA in its full length for the first time since the film had played. I think it was since the Hoover administration. And here's the part that I think is so important. This is all important. This is all critical. This is all really cool. This is the thing that I think is important. This film has played 32 times in theaters since 2016, 32 different times. A film from 1930. In 2018, it was licensed. It was licensed to Criterion, and Criterion released it on Blu-ray to critical acclaim. It's a beautiful, beautiful Blu-ray. If you haven't seen it, you should buy it right now. And I am delighted. This is a big announcement. Are you guys ready for this? It's going to release on digital this summer. You'll be able to see it on digital through our Digital Vault initiative, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in future slides. So I'm going to show you I'm going to show you just a really short clip segment here. And let me get to this. Just hit the arrow and it'll play. Well, I'm trying to get to my notes, so I have too many notes. All right, so King of Jazz was restored in 2016 in collaboration with Film Foundation using 4K workflow at Studio Post and NBC Universal Company with lab work by Synerik Prasad and YCM Labs. In search for the complete elements for the film, the 1930 original version was running at 105 minutes. The restoration team consulted at least 16 different sources across 9 international archives. The 1930 nitrate optical soundtrack negative was confirmed to be the best quality of all available audio material, and approximately 98% of the track was used for the project. The soundtrack served as a template to which 4 different picture elements were conformed, and approximately 60% of the picture was sourced from the original Technicolor 2-color nitrate negative. That's right, nitrate, that's right. The remaining 40% was pieced together from a 35mm nitrate print loaned by the Cohen Film Collection, a 35mm safety print loaned by the Packard Humanities Institute and held at the UCLA Film and Television Archive, and safety print material discovered at the Danish Film Institute. Talk about collaboration, right? All reels were in poor condition. Digital restoration techniques were applied to improve dirt, film damage, flicker, and stabilization. And the remaining short sections of missing picture were filled using production stills from the Universal Archives. The restoration was nominated for the 2017 Focal International Award for Best Restoration. We didn't win. The restoration was the first time a 2-color Technicolor negative had been scanned and recombined digitally. Oh, good, just in time. Okay, cool. So, how does this happen? Like, how does it all come together? What do we do? How do we collaborate? There's collaboration in the industry as a whole, and then there's collaboration inside your business. And it is so, so, so important that all of the different parts of every company are working together to get these films out. I think it's important to think about things like synergy. I know that's kind of a woo-woo word, but the thing is that, whoops, sorry, I got too excited. The thing is that I can't get the film to play in a theater if I'm not working with my theatrical distribution team. If I'm not talking to my physical home entertainment team about what their plan is to release it and to make sure that they know what we have coming up, if I'm not talking about to my licensing team to make sure that maybe there's not an opportunity for us to release something, but there's an opportunity for one of our licensees to release it. We have a committee at Universal that focuses specifically on catalog and making sure every part of the organization knows what's going on with the catalog work. And this is a fairly recent thing that is so exciting because our goal is for people to see these films. We want people to see these films. And it doesn't matter to me how people see films. We all love going to movie theaters. It's an amazing experience. But I think one of the things that we should all be thinking about is what are the ways that we can innovate technology now to get these films into people's hands. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Andrea, that vinyl is very popular. So is going to movies now. Our repertory business has gone up through the roof since COVID. We thought, oh, it's a COVID thing, right? People just want to get back into the theaters. No, it's continued. And the business continues to grow. And there's a lot of opportunity in the business, whatever your puzzle looks like, to get these films out. So my encouragement to you and my challenge to everyone is, let's get these films out. Let's get people to see them, and let's make sure that we're providing the information to our own team members internally, to our colleagues, to make sure that they know what to do and how to monetize these films, because Universal Pictures has funded us since 2012, and they've seen such an incredible return for the investment that they've made that they continue to fund us. And we only are able to do this because we provide a benefit back to the company. So I think it's really important for us all to remember that while it is a lot of fun and it is a lot of art and it is a lot of all of that other stuff, it's also a business. So how do we provide our value back to the company? And I'll just end it by giving a few statistics, that 140 of our restoration titles have screened 301 times at 90 different international and domestic festivals. That's amazing, so amazing. And 134 of those restorations have been licensed for 219 different releases for home entertainment and third-party releases. So, and then just a little bit of splash about the ways that we like to, talk about what we do, because that's important too. So thank you so much. SMPTE.
Last but certainly not least. No. Grover Crisp from Sony Pictures, and take it away.
Okay. This has been some great stuff tonight. I really loved it. I'm glad I was asked to be part of it. Really enjoyed it. So, like everybody else, I was just asked to come up with something, although there is a theme that's published, and it's like I can't quite figure out that theme, but anyway, we're going to do what we're going to do. So I am going to talk about restoring a film when there's nothing but one element to work with, in this case, a print. And so, I should say, I came up with this title, and when you plug in, like you start a PowerPoint, you plug in the title, and then it recommends all these different title slides. And the first one that came up was like, it had a projector. And then the next one had some other movie thing. And I just went through about 30 of them until I got down to the very last suggestion that the PowerPoint people had, which was this. And I have no idea what's going on the right side. But on the left side, it's like a headstone. And I thought, okay, the PowerPoint people have decided this is about a dead and buried film. And so they're kind of right. Anyway, let's get into it. This lovely young lady is Betty Compson. Betty Compson was a star in films for many years. She wasn't like a major star. She was kind of a mid-level star. But she made 235 films, beginning in 1915 and ending in 1948. And out of those, this is a production still, by the way, from The Docks of New York, which is a Paramount picture, released in the same year as the film that I'm going to talk about, 1928. She made, out of those films, she made 4 for Columbia, 3 silent films and 1 sound film. And the film that we're going to talk about, though, tonight is this film. Sorry, that's not a very good slide, but I couldn't find really good posters for this, called The Desert Bride. This is from this is the cover of a magazine from the period. It's a little bit better looking. This film was released 98 years ago tomorrow. I was hoping it would be 100, but 98 is okay. Anyway, of the 4 films that she made for us, we had preserved and restored 3 of them, but this particular film, The Desert Bride, we didn't have. And in 2016, I was contacted by a friend of mine in France. He's a film collector, and he does a lot of other things. And he had acquired a print collection from another collector in France, and this was one of the prints that he had. And he said, you know, are you interested in this? Do you have it? And internally, we didn't have anything on this film. I literally knew nothing about it. And we checked around with all the usual archives around the world, and there seemed to be nothing. So I said, yeah, we're really interested in this print. And so we acquired it. And we had no idea what the condition was or anything like that, or where it came from, of course. And so with things like that, where we don't know what it is and it's really old, there's one thing that we do, and that is we send it to this lady. Her name is Ulrike Reichold. We call her Uli. She works at Soneric Laboratory in New York. And although this photo was taken just a couple of days ago, in 2016, when we sent this print to her, she would have worked on the same workbench. She does an amazing job of inspection and repair work and preparation for what we need to do, which in this case would have been, of course, to scan the film. She has many years of laboratory experience, and she is an expert at what she does. And so one of the things that we receive once she's gone through a film is we receive a detailed inspection report. Now I have to put on my glasses here. Which gives us an idea of the general condition of the film, whatever the element is. In this case, there was only the one nitrate print, which she detailed for us in terms of, you know, the pathé stock, the amount of shrinkage, and the various anomalies that would that are inherent in the film or physically on the film. In this case, there were a lot of perforation. There's a lot of perforation damage, a lot of perforations that didn't exist actually, and we use this report as kind of a guide as to what we might need to do. For example, here's reel 1, and she's noted that, for example, there is no main title, so we knew that was going to be an issue. There were two production cards, you know, with produced by and the other credits. And you'll note here where she indicates missing frames. It turned out that in this print there were, let's see, I added it up. What is it? There were 239 splices in this print. And when I read that, I thought, okay, well, there's not going to be much left. And I don't know, you know, what we're going to have to work with, and this is probably just a preservation project so that we have something in the library. But you'll notice that she indicated the perforation damage and the missing perforations, and there were quite a few of those. Here's an example. So you'll see over on the right, you know, the missing perforations. But up at the top, you'll see this one intertitle card, this dialogue. So one reason there were so many splices in this print is that they had taken all of the intertitles and the title cards and the production cards, and they had shortened them to 1 to 6 frames. And that was throughout the entire print. And so immediately we realized that we're going to have to recreate those, of course, but most of them still existed, so we were able to use the original cards. But I want to continue on with the missing perforations. Here's another example. There's quite a few perforations missing. More here on this shot, and here's a closer version of that shot. This shot is actually in an example I'm going to show here in a minute. But even though the perforations were missing, you can also see that there was quite a bit of distress there on these perforations to begin with. So we thought, okay, what are we going to do if we want to restore this film? We have no other film elements. We don't, in terms of things that are missing, we're not sure what we would do about those items. But in our inventory, we had this, a continuity script, an original continuity script. We had one copy of it in the library. And this would tell us, shot by shot, what was happening. It wasn't complete. Some of the intertitles were just, partial intertitles and so forth. And it was 11 pages long, and this is, 655 shots. It's interesting. There was no main title. There was no end title. But the shot just before the end title was absolutely complete. So I don't know what happened to the end title there. In any case, using this continuity script, we decided to try to reconstruct it as best we could. The original runtime seemed to be about 56 minutes, and this print was around 50 minutes. And calculating that out with all the shortening of all the intertitles and all the other, title cards, we felt we had a pretty complete print, actually. There were a lot of jump cuts, missing frames here and there, but pretty much complete, except for one scene, which is the scene where the heroine and the hero, where they first meet. And I'm going to show you right now. I think that is this. There you go. All right. This is a raw scan of a sequence in the film where the two of them first meet. This is without any cleanup or color correction. It's at the end of the first reel and the beginning of the second reel. This is the beginning of the second reel, which is in a lot worse shape. Besides the obvious scratches and dirt and all that kind of stuff, this print was not well made. So there's inherent movement, a lot of jitter. The entire film is basically jumping around. So this is when they first meet. That's how long that intertitle lasted. But I do want to go back. If I can do this, let's see here. I want to. This is not allowing me to do this. So let's just let it play, because there's the thing I want to say. So between this shot and this shot, in the continuity, there were 16 other shots that were missing, including one line of dialogue, the introductory title card for our hero here, who decides to climb the wall. I'll let this play out, but I will say that this film. So the story of this film is about a French army lieutenant, Captain Devereux, who's sent on a mission in North Africa to quell a rebellion, and instead he's captured. And if I can go backwards here a little bit. There you go. Okay, Alan Force there on the left. He's the hero, and Otto Matheson, who's on the right. He's the bad guy, and he captures Alan and tortures him, and he holds Diane is her name, and he holds her hostage, and kind of works out in the end. I won't give away the ending. You'll have to see it. But that's basically the story here. So what we decided to do, there were a couple of things we could do with the missing footage. And this was the only place in the film where there literally were a lot of shots in sequence that were missing. We could take the continuity and just use like one card after another. It was how that was described. Or we could do nothing, just let it play the way you've seen it, and people can try to figure out what happened. But instead, working at Roundabout Entertainment with my colors, Sherry Eisenberg, we decided to come up with a title card that would kind of explain what was happening and insert it so that it seems kind of seamless in a way, although it's not. So we came up with this. So this is the A in as was from an existing title card somewhere else in the film, the same background. We used the same font. And reading through one day all those different descriptions of the shots that happened, I wrote this little description that would be just, explain what's happening because we don't have the footage. And I think the next thing we're going to see here is a before and after. So on the right side, you'll see the original footage that you've already seen, and on the left here, you'll see how we compensated for it. So this introductory title card was missing. We had to recreate that. I will say that once I discovered how
There we go. You're back.
the condition of the film and how it was severely, shaking around like this, we did send it to Larry at MTI Film, where they did all of the cleanup and all of the stabilization, which they did a great job. And of course, we let that intertitle run out as long as it needs to. Let me see what is on my next slide. This one, okay. So that was the major scene that was missing. there are a lot of other jump cuts and minor little things. A lot of intertitle cards that we had to recreate, and of course, because they were all shortened so severely, you know, working with Sherry, we basically lengthened them all and read them to make sure that they would work. But once we had done this, I thought, okay, now we have to deal with the issue of the fact that there's no main title, and we have to put a title on this thing, and there's no end title. So we looked at the continuity again. So the first thing up is the Columbia seal. So that tells me right away it's not this, because this was the early silent film Columbia logo. It's not quite the torch lady, of course. It's a lady anyway. But, and it wasn't this, which actually is the Columbia lady logo that started in the same year that this film was released, but that's not what it said was at the head. Instead, it was this, the Columbia seal, which was a logo that was used in between those earlier two that I just mentioned. And this was the first time that the phrase gems of the screen appeared, which was later used as the basis for the TV distribution arm of Columbia called Screen Gems. Anyway, we had this. We pulled in another silent film from the same era to use as a guide in terms of how these things would work and how they would, how the main titles would look. This is a raw scan of one of the shots that still existed in the print. Walter Lang directed it, by the way. He was later known for films, musical films like The King and I and so forth, but he did this one. And this was another, the only other card that still existed in the print. Print actually begins with this card, and then moves on. And so we wanted to replicate the font style here in creating a new intertitle. So what we decided to do was to take the template here. So we did this. This is Sherry, actually. We got rid of all the type. We kept this. And then we also created this background, this fill, to fill into the center there for when we created the final main title. We asked the graphics folks at Roundabout Entertainment, where we were working on this, to come up with a main title for us, and this was our first example. And you can see the font that they used here was the same font for like story and photography and so forth, but we liked the block letters, of course, for the main title. So we asked them to give it another try, and they came up with this. This was more like it. So we decided not to just leave it at this and then go into the credits that exist, but to try to recreate the title as it would have been, probably, based on other silent films of that era. So we came up with this, and including the abbreviation for corporation up there, which is, I think, is kind of funny. And this seemed to work. Although when we looked at the other title cards, it was a little bit thick, so we changed it slightly. You can see from this to this. And so what I'm going to show you now is the print as it existed that we inherited or we acquired, and how the opening of the film looked. Just like this. Brief cuts, short. Okay, so after we had done that other work, this is not it. All right, let's go here, here, and I think we should have audio on this. This is, we'll show this one more time. And then we're going to show you the final version with music, which we had scored by Cliff Ritalik. And I think that this would play it. There you go. Good old Roscoe. Good old Roscoe. He was the comic relief in the film. We're showing this at a relatively low resolution. All the work was done at 4K. It was scanned very meticulously because of the condition of the print at Soneric on a 4K wet-gate scanner, hand-built by Simon Lund there, who's their technical director. And it was a 4K project all the way through. The film, this was actually a 2018 project, and we finally got this film released. It was on disc in the Columbia Classics Volume 5 box set that came out a year or so ago. And I hope that we get to show it again sometime. I do want to thank these folks here at Roundabout Entertainment, because they actually still had a lot of the stuff that we needed to put this together, because, you know, this is a project from 8 years ago. And Rita and Sherry, I want to thank you all for this and appreciate you sitting and watching this. Thanks.
So we're at 9 o'clock. Are we okay for Q&A?
Yeah, are we good to take a few questions? We can come up and maybe we'll take a few questions if you guys are willing to stay for a few more minutes. We'll make it as brief as we can, but
Or
thank you.
until they kick us out.
Right, either way.
Any questions? Okay.
Well, first, I want to say, thank you to the panelists. Thank you to all of you. It was fantastic stuff. And to Grover's point about, the theme. The theme was really getting to talk about the things that you guys were passionate about, and that was actually, I think, a really great part of this.
Thank you guys for coming and doing this. Is really great to listen. I know going from analog to digital, like obviously we see the issues that we've had with like 100 years of filmmaking. What issues are you guys facing with going from digital to digital preservation? I know that digital filmmaking is only about 20 years old, so I'm wondering if you guys are foreseeing anything or dealing with anything now. My name is Matthew. I don't have any affiliation. I'm from the neighborhood. So.
Well, welcome. Anybody want to take it?
There's one interesting story from Paramount I could tell. I won't name the movie, but it was very early digitally shot film, and it was in the early days where there was a concern about the risk to security and piracy that even anything digital would have. And there was work done to finish the DI at a lab that, when they wrote the final files off to data tapes, encrypted it for security purposes. And so a few years later, when we went to actually pull those data tapes, which were really, that was the best original source for that film, we went back to that facility and asked for the key, and they didn't have it. Yeah. Some really smart people that now work at another company, not that I'm bitter, did an incredible work. It took them about a year, and they used math, actually, to figure out that encryption and bring those things back to life. So that's one story that is amazing, sort of next generation restoration work.
Yeah, for digital archiving anyway, if you're going to encrypt something, it's important to save the keys. And probably long term, that's probably not the best way to do it. But there's other things to deal with. Anyone else? No?
Bill,
yeah.
Question. When you do these restorations, in terms of the copyright of the things, is that extended, or will you add audio to it, or how does the extension of stuff that's like Mickey Mouse expiring and stuff, does that change the scenario of patent, or rather copyright of old movies?
I can't tell. It looks like you're looking at me. So
Well,
I'll give a
I'll give a stab. You're the
at
oldest
it.
one on the
Yeah.
panel there, so I'll look at you walked into that.
Yeah. I love hearing that from my seniors. So this film that I just was talking about is now in public domain. And there is that issue in terms of copyright. But the fact that we scored it, and we did a number of silent films and added scores, and we were able to give it kind of a new copyright, so to speak, based on that version. Otherwise, I mean, it is what it is. So.
Anyone else? Oh, yep. There you
go. I'm honored to be in a room with all these professionals. My name is David Crown. I work at FanDuel. I'm not in the restoration business, but I work in the television business. My question goes out to you guys regarding, after it's completely restored, is it ever restored? What is the final piece of media, whether it's digital or a film? Once it's restored and it's 100%, is it transferred to more discs? Is it more cloud storage? How do you LTO? How is it actually finally Iron Mountain? Is it finally stored somewhere? Because it's going to be released again, as earlier someone mentioned regarding digital technology. Is it going to be re-edited for your phone? So are they going to take prints from what's been restored and then re-edit back to digital formats for distribution on your phone, let's say shows, motion pictures that have not actually been released in the full theatrical presentation.
I just want to give one plug for something I've been working on for a long time called the Academy Digital Preservation Forum.
Yes.
There's a website which talks about this very issue of preserving things digitally, which is, something I'm also trying to bring to Iron Mountain to offer as a service for everybody to do it, because it's really critical, right? Just to tell a quick story about the British Library, for example, they were hacked about 2 or 3 years ago, very serious cyber attack. And the work that they did to actually put in digital preservation around their collections, the digitized collections of audio, stills, things like that, they were fine. They lost all their enterprise systems like HR, finance, things like that, but digital preservation was okay. It's a really important issue, so just plugging that in response to your question. Thank you for letting me do that.
Andrea, I wanted to add something about the question about the phones. Movies are already on the phones. They're already there. And so is episodic. You said you're from the episodic world. It's already there. So this is a little bit about the challenge to the audience. We really need to think about how we're going to capture that audience, because it is a big audience. Everyone in here has a phone. I guarantee it. And while we may not all watch movies on our phones, we may be of a certain age, and there's a lot of people who do. So we need to be thinking about that for sure.
All right. Hi, everyone.
Oh.
This young lady, this gentleman, and then him.
Okay.
And I will see you down there too.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Ariel. I'm a student at USC right now. And I was...
Thank you for coming.
I was happy to be here. So my question is just kind of, you guys talk a lot about how the technology is evolving in terms of restoration. Have you guys kind of thought about how you're going to approach like having to restore a restoration, I guess, in the future? Or are you guys kind of like focused on like, I guess I'm trying to ask, like, have you had to go back over other people's work kind of before, and like what's that process like?
Oh, sure.
It's about how some films get restored several times. Yes, they do.
Over and over and over again sometimes, yes.
I think as the tools get better, I mean, scanners have gotten higher resolution, and we've seen that we can get more and more information out of negatives. At some point, that'll, we'll reach some sort of, Nyquist issue of, really being able to extract any more information. But until we see that we're not getting anything else out of film, then the tools the tools from scanners to all of the things that you've seen here, will continue to evolve, and so there's always an opportunity to do something better.
That's why you should save your film.
Yes.
Well, it's in terms of restoring films over and over, part of this has to do with consumers and what they can see. A huge driver of film restoration in the mid-90s was the advent of DVD. So DVD was a huge improvement over VHS. And so I think all the studios, certainly at ours, there was a massive amount of work that had to be done to restore and remaster films for DVD. The exact same thing happened when Blu-ray came in. Exactly. We were going and restoring films, improving them for Blu-ray because you could just see so much more. The same thing happened when 4K started coming in around 12 or so years ago, and suddenly we were back working on the same films that we worked on 20 years ago, only now instead of in analog format in a film laboratory, which we would then transfer, we were doing it as we were scanning at 4K and working in a 4K environment. And that hasn't stopped. So the great thing about all that is that the work is an improvement because the technology and the tools have improved over all that time, along with the display formats that have improved. So it's a great benefit. You know, we work really off of all of that. So it was a great impetus.
And now the pictures are this big, and they're turned this way. So we're going backwards.
Pshaw, pshaw. There was another question.
Hi, Lee Eigner, Sony Music. Just kind of talking about what Larry showcased with the generative tools for AI and how it kind of prepares films. I'm just wondering whether it's Larry, have you received any kind of pushback from studios using AI tools and like any kind of content security, IP concerns, anything like that, or any other archives or studios who have actually used AI, and has that been embraced? Has there been concerns? Kind of what that usage of those innovations have actually looked like?
There's been no pushback other than we don't want anything out to the cloud. It has to be done on premises, in your computer, so to speak. That's the only pushback we've gotten. Actually, it's been, in some cases, it's been a great saver. You don't have another element. My presentation was cut short by Bill, but
That's only because you were long-winded.
Had I just found that insert button, I think I could have gone through the whole thing. But what it does, I think the future of restoration is very exciting, and I think AI will contribute to that quite a bit. As an example, you've seen the work of generative AI where whole scenes are created now. It's very common on YouTube to see that stuff. Well, I would say that The Desert Bride is a possible example, is missing scenes. I know that in the future you'll be able to recreate that scene based on the description that Grover had using generative AI. Yeah. So you could create a whole scene that was missing and hopefully get very close to even the look of it, because you could degenerate the look as well. So yeah, I think there's an exciting future for restoration with AI, and we're just at the beginning of it.
I was going to say, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I don't really agree with what he just said.
I knew that was going to happen.
What I see as a benefit for it is some of the examples that he showed, and not recreating whole scenes when there's nothing to base it on. I think that's problematic, to say the least. But the examples that he used, where he used AI to replace frames in, let's say, a given shot where there's one continuous shot and you're missing 5 frames right in the middle of it, and the AI software can recreate those. Well, guess what? 25 years ago, we were doing exactly the same thing in a graphics suite, and I don't mean me personally, but the vendors we were working with, where they had to manually try to recreate those missing frames based on the frames before it and the frames after it. And so this is actually the same thing, but faster and probably better. So, that's where I think AI is a benefit. Recreating a scene that doesn't exist anywhere, I think, has issues, in my opinion.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a follow-up question for Larry. Back in 2012, you did some tests for me in dejuddering material. I was very impressed with the generative AI material that you showed, and I'm wondering, is this something, have you developed a tool that can help with judder? Because in the end, we were never able to satisfactorily resolve that issue in the original camera negative. By the way, I'm Chris Reyna. I ran Imagica USA, and I now help TCM with their film festival. But I wanted to ask you if you have a tool yet.
No.
Is it
No,
is it a
I
big
mean,
enough problem?
You're talking about when the film and the camera was not registering properly, and so you got to
panning.
Oh,
pan
panning.
jitter.
I'm sorry, because not enough slices of time is really what you're talking about. Yeah. So we can take 24 frames and make them 60, and create new frames in between. We've been able to do that. Okay, good for Cameron. I mean, but we're doing similar things where we're taking 24 frames and making them 120 frames. So you're getting really new frames in between, and they are new frames. So it dejutters it.
Yeah, I think that this is where like the generative AI, conversation comes in, where, the generative AI tools that most people are concerned about are these things that are replacing what people do. But these tools that Larry and others are creating or have modified or improved upon, they're improvements on older tools that did similar things much slower. So there's already a history of using tools and technology in this space to fix problems that occur. So it's not as controversial in this space.
The issue with any kind of development for restoration, or actually any kind of development, is the amount of time that it takes. We are now working on an AI tool for gate hairs. We've been working on this thing for 2 years. There's not enough money in the universe to pay me back for those 2 years. And I'm just saying, it's really the truth. I mean, the restoration as a business for software is very limited. I'm going to just give you one statistic. The first day that Final Cut was released by Apple, and I think it was 2008 or 9, the first day, there were 100,000 downloads worldwide. In the first day. In restoration, I don't think there are 3,000 seats in the whole world. And that's the difficulty with being in the software restoration business. It takes a long time to do things. It's exciting when you get it, but the amount of time it takes. We started this stuff with the frame rate conversion in 2022. It's now 2026, and we're still working on making it better. It just never stops. So, yeah, if you want to put a little coin box outside, and you're feeling generous today, dimes, quarters, anything.
Yeah, but I'm dying for the gate hair fix. I'd love that.
Did you say you'd give him a dime for the gate hair fix?
I'll give him a dime.
I'll throw in a nickel.
Sorry, the question?
Yeah, hi there, Jamie Busby, CEO of Gotham Industries. So I just wanted to check in with you and see about the relevance of the photochemical process in the era of digital and the era of AI, specifically if and how you're using it, if there are still separations being filmed out, that sort of thing. And lastly, about the demand and the hunger for repertory prints in cinema. Because, for example, with us, I'd say manufacturing release prints 35 through 70 is a huge business for us, with prints being delivered in 14 countries at this point. So 10% of that is the studios maybe, and 9% of that would be new theatrical films. I'm just wondering what that looks like for you guys.
Anyone? No taker?
Well, I don't know. I guess.
Do you want to go?
Oh, okay. Well, the photochemical part for restoration doesn't really have much play nowadays. One reason for that is that a lot of film laboratories don't exist anymore. Here in LA, the only wet lab that does processing and printing and everything is Photochem. And a lot of their work is new titles. And a lot of their work, besides in addition to new titles, is large format titles. So it can be really challenging just to get a print made. And, you know, there's no criticism of that laboratory. They're great. We love them, work with them all the time. But it's really difficult to do that. And also the costs of photochemical have really skyrocketed, like multiple hundreds of percents over the last 15 years. So that's an issue. I'm not sure exactly what else you were getting at. I mean, in terms of prints and repertory and showing things in theaters, we certainly support that. We have a huge print library. We have a fairly substantial DCP library. And we're happy to accommodate, you know, venues in either format as long as we have it, you know. So is
That's
something you
exactly
wanna
what I
add
was going
to-
to say. We still have a huge print library that we supply all over the world, as well as a huge DCP library. We do still make prints, just not anywhere near the volume of what, you know, was made even 20 years ago.
Maybe two more questions? Well, we have one and then two down here, and this gentleman here. Okay, then we'll call that.
Hello. Oh, sorry, very loud. My name is Mars. I'm a freelance colorist. I'm not in restoration or archiving, although this panel has piqued my interest a lot. So thank you for your wealth of knowledge. I just wanted to ask a slightly naive question, as I'm not as familiar with this part of the industry. Who drives the decision behind which films do get restored and archived? And is there any potential for any unconscious bias about which films get prioritized and which ones don't, if that question makes sense?
Sure. Good question. Oh, go ahead.
I'll take it. We have at Universal, we have a committee as well as a team that helps us to strategize, to answer all of those questions. We create a slate of restorations every year that hits certain categories that are trying to hit very specific targets within those categories. Is it a undiscovered gem? That's one of our categories. Is it a culturally inclusive title? That's one of our categories. And so we have different categories like that. So we work very closely. I talked about the committee that we have as well a little earlier. We work very closely to really get into deep catalog titles that, listen, we have thousands of titles in our catalog. I do not know all of them. I have not seen all of them. And people are all the time saying, have you seen this one? Are you familiar with this one? How could I be, right? I need an AI to help me with that, right? That's what I need AI for. So we work with our team to identify titles, and then our strategy team to help us identify our different categories so that we are targeting those specific categories. So I'll give you an example of one that kind of fits a couple of different buckets. 2 years ago, we restored the film The Wiz, which is a very iconic film for the Black community. It's a pretty amazing film. I think it was ahead of its time, quite frankly. But when we worked with the strategy team, they said not only does this hit Wicked, which we have coming out, you know, in the future, but it also targets cultural diversity. So we were able to hit a couple of different buckets with a film like The Wiz. So we're really trying to look at our catalog in that manner so that we can get as many films like that as we can out within our program. It's not just the ones that are iconic, it's ones that are very deeply rooted in the culture as well. Hope that helps.
We do the same thing too. Another thing that we do is we look at the element condition too. So that's another way that we prioritize things, just based on the element need for preservation. So that's another bucket in addition to what you were talking about, which I'm sure you guys do too.
So this is Alejandra. I work for Multicom Entertainment. Hello. This question is for those of you that are like responsible for really large collections. I'm talking about probably more than millions of assets, which is probably the four of you to the right, no? Universal, the Columbia Pictures, Sony Pictures, Iron Mountain. So I wanted to say, Andrea said something earlier. she's championing what is called cold storage, storage for the preservation of physical assets. No, ideally, the original films or the best copies. So my question is, is it really a race against time? Are there things that have not been touched? And do you have more concern with creating a great cloud infrastructure and digital preservation policy? It's that more important that perhaps looking into how are you physically conserving the physical film assets? What do you think is more important? And that do the I know you cannot do everything at the same time. Well, what do you think you should be put your attention into, the digital cloud storage, or let's try to keep the elements around for maybe a little bit longer? What is your vision into that problem that you're gonna leave to the new generations coming after you? Sorry if I didn't know how to articulate that.
I
well.
can answer that a little bit just because we deal with lots of different people that are struggling with this question all the time, right? The problem is for most archives is, budget constraints, right? So a lot of people get pressure to scan or digitize and throw things away, right? So we try to work with them in case they want to keep them. I think you should not throw things away. Keep your original physical object. I think that's really important. It's an artifact. It's other things like that. So, but, once you have actually restored something digitally, that's a new artifact in it itself that deserves its own preservation as well. So I think it's both, and I try to encourage people to think about that. But there's a lot of pressure, I know, from a lot of different people that we work with, especially with videotape, to digitize the videotape and then toss it.
What you're not saying is that when you were at Paramount, you championed us getting a frozen vault, which essentially stops all the decomp on our elements. So she saved most of our original negatives and things like that from going into further decomp. So thank you, Andrea, for that.
And as you can see, the idea of doing something with an original element and throwing it away is nothing new. I was going to say that, back at Warner Brothers, I remember working on Paramount titles that were CRIs made from the original nitrate negatives, and they threw away the negatives, right? Because again, flammable, all the issues, and the CRIs.
I think that was Fox, but anyway. No.
What was that? What was that? It was Fox. Yeah. Oh, it's Fox. Oh, sorry.
Just can't have you slur Paramount, even though I'm not there anymore.
Sorry, not slur. No. Like, it wasn't just there. It was like so many others. So, this isn't anything new of how do we save money or how do we, try. There was some, but we were able to recover that because we have digital tools. But the point being that if everyone should be preserving whatever they have that's an artifact that has some value, because today, fortunately, I think we have a better idea of like, oh, there might be some value in this, whereas many years ago they were maybe a little bit more like, oh, yeah, there might not be value in this, but hopefully everybody's kind of seen the light on that. Okay.
Okay, so my name is Lisa Drake, and I probably am very ignorant because I just know Larry. But it was fascinating.
Hi, Lisa.
That says everything, actually.
But I found it.
Thanks for the compliment. I appreciate it.
He's a great guy. Anyways.
But he's a moron.
No.
He hasn't.
He hired my son when he was out of college, okay, and so he could pay the bills. Anyways, well, after watching the collaboration of everybody on the film side, the studio side, it seems like that it all does it go through someone like Larry, the technical side, where he gets the final images to clean it all up? Is that how that works?
Let me. The process, generally speaking, is a studio will come to us with a project. We will probably supply the scanning, although some people have preferences for the scanning, but we will most likely supply the scanning of the film into digital form. Then we will work on what we call pre-processing, which means we are addressing most of the issues that come up with film deterioration. As film deteriorates over time, you get all kinds of anomalies, fading of the dyes of the film, flicker, shrinkage, all kinds of things, warping, and those things are handled in the pre-process stage. Concurrently, you're going to work on the dirt and the scratch, because that's where most of the labor is dirt and scratch. And then at the same time, somebody's going to be starting the color correction process. Hopefully all that happens within several months, and at the end of the process, you make what's called the deliverables, which could be a score of different types of files that are made, and that has to be approved by the QC people that the studio hires, and finally then you can bill it.
What's your favorite part? Hard
The
to tell.
billing part.
Yeah. There you go.
No, really, seriously?
Last question.
All this material. Oh, my name is Jess, formerly at UCLA, now at Paramount. I just wonder if anybody is really working on saving this material in whatever form on film for the humans that are going to be around 500 years from now.
Well, I'll take that one. I think that, you know, film, given its current state, you know, and given that there aren't as many labs, and who knows what who knows what the future of film will really be, but certainly given the amount of films and TV shows that are out there today, trying to preserve on film or trying to create new film elements that would last that long is probably not as realistic as maybe one would hope. But there are other technologies coming along that have a much longer lifespan in digital form. And there's Microsoft Silica project that they're, you know, being able to etch data into glass. There's Cerebyte where they're doing the same kind of thing but in ceramic. There's DNA data storage. I'm working with a company called Atlas that is coming to market with the ability to actually take digital information and store it in DNA, the same kind, not human DNA, but the same but it's the same data structure that that then maybe has the ability to have 1,000+ year lifespan. The Silica project, you know, they claim 10,000 years. All of these things are stable elements that have a much better lifespan in normal sort of storage conditions than film. So we don't have the problems of film are its photochemical nature and you know, having to store it in cold conditions in order to, you know, stop its degradation. But these other technologies have potentially much better viability in the long term like that. So hopefully those will come along to help us.
Let me just add one thing. I think that, you know, I think there's a certain myth that film is easy to take care of, you know, and that you know, and digital isn't, you know, and that's why it lasts. You just sit it on a shelf and it's fine forever. But, you know, that really is a little bit of an insult to the archivists that really care for that film every single day. Yeah. And, you know, make sure that it's cataloged, that it's in good environments, that occasionally they go and inspect it and take care of it. It's not like, you know, and digital's hard too, but I do, you know, that's one thing that's just always bugged me about, you know, like just put it on film. It's easy. It's not easy. Yeah. It's a lot of work.
You
and
just
a
put
lot
it
of
in
great people
salt
that are archivists are really taking care of those films as well as taking care of digital. So thanks for letting me just editorialize a little bit.
Yeah, shout out to the archivists, definitely.
I'm afraid it's 9:30,
All right.
and I want to thank our amazing panelists and moderator. And I want to thank all of you for coming. You are amazing. And we hope to see you at the next meeting. Have a good night.